My name is John.
Hi, and I'm Suzanne Sterling.
Suzanne and I have been married for going on 33 years. We met on the job in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was kind of love at first sight in so many ways. She was just a wonderful young lady that I got to know over time, and found out that we had a very similar upbringing. We both came from families with one other sibling, raised in the church, and our life continued on a pretty blessed pace. We have two children now, adult children. Garrison is our youngest. He's my son. He's 23 years old, and our daughter McKenna is 26 years old, and they're currently living in Arizona and working their way back here to Georgia. And in the meantime, throughout the raising of our kids, I made a decision at 40 years old to join the military, which is a little bit of an anomaly, but God drew me into that space. I've always been interested in leadership, but it was a wonderful opportunity. And again, through that process, a lot of things happened which contribute to our story that we're bringing today. But God was and continues to be faithful. So exactly 25 months ago, our family had an unfortunate circumstance where Suzanne and the kids and I parted ways, and that lasted for well over a year. Suzanne and I both were raised in Christian homes. I came to know the Lord as a young man, probably before junior high school. I was in a wonderful church environment, wonderful youth group, but I also experienced something that was very unfortunate during that time in my life, and I was molested as a young boy by a caregiver, not part of our family, and I say that to illustrate the fact that I had a Savior, I had a Lord, and I had a demon in my life through the trauma. And it's crazy, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. God, it says in His Word that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and I don't know if part of that is hiding the bad stuff away and tucking it someplace. In my instance, I had literally no idea that this had happened because it was so deep in my mind and in my heart, I guess. And so one of the things that contributed to this ultimate blow up, other than just life happening, we had a lot of stuff going on, was the fact that my wife had tried for decades to come alongside a guy that she knew she loved, but was somehow broken and could not bring himself to be known. He was scared. He was protective. That day back in February of 2022 was a game changer, because my wife left, my kids left, but it was the very thing that God needed to have happen in John Sterling's life to leverage an opportunity to take a look at my life.
While we were separated, there of course was a lot of emotions I was dealing with, but I would have to say that the underlying thing was that I was in mourning. I was in mourning because, there had been a death that had occurred in a way regarding John and I and our union under Christ. And, John has referenced his trauma, and with that trauma, he became isolated, like he said, and for me as a helpmate to him, it became hard. There was almost like a moat around him where I could go only so far, and then when he was pulling back, and one thing he pulled back from was his faith, and I was searching and wondering why this was happening. I knew it was probably just going to be for a season because of the man of God I knew him to really be, but this season went on for a good decade, and I knew that I needed to rely on God's mercy and His abilities to help me with this. I was at my wit's end, and so I had a very direct but short prayer with Him that day in my living room, and I went to Him and I said, Lord, I need my husband to come back to You. My family needs my husband to come back to You, and I am saying to do any means possible that You need to do it, even if it requires my life. And I really didn't know a way forward. I didn't know how I was going to move forward. Divorce never tasted right in my mouth, I was all about, this is a covenant, and I just can't walk away, but I didn't know how to go forward.
God just said to me, John, it may be your wife, it may be somebody else, but you need to run after me. And so that's what I decided to do. And it was hard. It was really hard. God's provided all these resources for us, and He's big enough, and His resources are big enough. And I found some amazing people that led me in biblically robust, God-honoring opportunities. And that is when my life started changing, and eventually my wife started seeing something.
But, practical things came into play because we are married. Tax season was coming up, and we had to file our taxes together. So I had to get in touch with him about that. Well, in the meantime, his counselor had challenged him that your wife needs to see you, John. You guys have been separated now for almost a year, and she needs to just see you fully and see your countenance, see how you are at peace, and how, this hard work you've been putting in, she needs to see the results of this. And so John was like, well, that ain't gonna happen. I'll tell her, I'll ask her, but she's not gonna get on this call with me. And so he did, and he was right. I immediately wanted to shut it down, but I for something in me was like, okay, the Lord just was gently saying to me, look what you've asked of me. Now it's time for you to come see what I've done. I knew at that, over the past year that John had been involved in Eagles Landing, and he was involved in the life group there. And so he had told me about how amazing this life group was and how people were so vulnerable and they were broken and they would let you know it, and they shared, and he was saying how supportive this group had been to him over this past year. And he referenced who led it, which was Tim and Georgia Sexton, and that they had quite a story of their own. And so he broke that down to me, and we thought a good next step was, I was in Arizona, he was in Georgia. I couldn't really just hop on a plane overnight and be there to start some counseling, but this was a way for us to get in front of someone through Zoom with Tim, who had been with John, had been observing him over the past year, had been pouring into him, and John had been receiving. And so he and John recorded a few sessions, and Tim knew that, he was speaking to both of us, even though I wasn't there. And so that was my introduction to Eagles Landing and the life group. And that is what helped me to feel safe in a way of knowing the culture I was going to come back to. When John and I really would have to dig in and start working on us, I knew that we were going to have that community to surround us. Of course, we are on a journey, and as of today, John and I have reconciled. I've been here now since June. This is now March. We have started our life here. We've gotten plugged in. Our family, we have 2 kids, as we mentioned, and our daughter has totally reconciled with her dad, and my son is pretty much all the way there. My daughter's been here a couple times, and she's in fact getting in the process of moving herself back here, and my son will follow. So the Lord is still massaging, the reconciliation with our family as a whole. But John and I are we're very grounded, and we're back in that unity. We're unified under the Lord, and that is everything.
It's because God is using our life in an incredible way after 30 years of marriage. And it was told to me that, on this journey, Satan has 5-year plans, he's got 10-year plans, he's got 20 and 30-year plans to absolutely ruin marriages. And we weren't going to be a part of that. But we want to be a shining example of, one, how difficult and how much work you've got to put in, but how much God is capable of rescuing and restoring relationships. We're really excited also about looking at some things like a marriage ministry, an official marriage ministry at Eagles Landing that really digs in to our community and the brokenness that's out there, and normalizing tough conversations and allowing people to come to the table exactly where they are with their hurts and their fears and their real lives. And so we're really privileged that God has chosen to take us through this process and allow us to be used in His kingdom.